I'm reading today from the 14th chapter of the Gospel of Matthew. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." I thought that if you attach yourself to Jesus, if you become a disciple, all will be well. No more storms. A lot of people get the idea that if you're a believer, life must always go well for you. This is an unsettling story because we see that the people closest to Jesus are in grave danger and they're terrified. It's no wonder that they're afraid. Any sane person would be afraid. When you're in a familiar situation, even a hard one that you've come through many times in the past, there's no need for fear. You've handled it before. You can do it once more. But this story is unsettling because it shows that even if you are with Jesus, you just might find yourself in an extreme situation that you're not prepared to handle. Let's say, to bring it home, you're living life and all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of a global pandemic. Nothing is normal any longer. No one knows for sure how this is going to play out. No wonder people are afraid today. Then there's Peter. Just to be clear, there were 12 disciples on the boat. Jesus amazes them all by approaching them in a most unusual way, walking on the water. There were 12 disciples who all saw Jesus walking on water, but only one of the 12, 8.3% of the group, asked to join Jesus in walking on water. Are we supposed to admire him? Or are we better off using the common sense that God has given us and staying in the boat where you at least have something under you? That's what 91.7 of them chose to do. So there's a difference between Peter and the 11. They've made different decisions on how to respond to Jesus walking on the water. I've come to believe, though, that there's something even more important than the decision to get out of the boat or to stay in the boat. So here's my whole sermon in one sentence. The really crucial thing is what you do when you're sinking fast and you know it. On this, we can all learn something important from Peter. Whether we're one of the 8.3% who are daredevils or part of the 91.7% who are holding on for dear life in the boat. I appreciate these words I found from Beverly Gaventa. She says, "Fear characterizes the atmosphere of the whole story. The variety of faith granted to human beings does not banish fear. Faith does, however, teach us whose name to call and who waits to calm us? For faith knows who is powerful over the deep of our fears as over the deep of the waters. Whose name to call? That's what is most important. That's the thing that Peter gets right. He says, Lord, save me. That's Peter at his best. So maybe the most helpful thing I can say to you today is not to stop being afraid, but rather, when you are afraid, be sure that you direct your attention to Jesus, because he's the one who can help, as he demonstrated to that sometime daredevil Peter. The reason that Jesus can help is that he really is, as the disciples discovered that day, the Son of God. A lot of people read this story and find Peter to be a role model for Christian faith. You've got to get out of the boat, take a risk. Maybe. But I have my doubts. Of course, I'm one of the 91.7% who are not daredevils. You'll never catch me jumping out of an airplane. You'll never catch me climbing El Capitan. So I know that as I read stories like this, I'm biased. But I do agree that in at least one area, Peter is a role model. Not that he gets out of the boat, but he's a role model because when he is in real trouble, he knows where to find help. He cries out to Jesus for help, even if he's in this mess because it's his own doing. Wouldn't it be great if our faith would banish fear once and for all? Good riddance to fear. But fear is so stubborn. It just keeps coming back. And then the question is what to do with it. And it's at that point we can learn a thing or two from Peter. As Beverly Gaventa says, faith teaches us whose name to call and who waits to calm us. In other words, when you're afraid due to the mess you're in, whether it's your own mess that you've created or something as random as a virus, be sure to pivot so that you're looking toward Jesus. Then you'll actually get some help. We live in a dangerous world. There's this virus spreading in our community that just might kill you. There's going to be fear in our lives. Let's admit that. But let's also develop the instinct to call on Jesus when we are afraid. Even great heroes of the faith like Peter are sometimes overwhelmed by fear. His best move as he was rapidly sinking into the water was to cry out, Lord, save me. And when fear comes our way, we can do the same. Everybody's subject to fear. Even a daredevil like Peter will sometimes wonder, what am I doing here? But good news, all of us, whether we're a couch potato or a daredevil or somewhere in the middle, all of us can say, Lord, save me.